Focus. Focus.
What's up guys, I'm Dan from The New Travel, and today I'm going to be comparing Montreal and Vancouver. They are two cities I've lived in, and just so you don't think I'm biased, I actually grew up in Winnipeg, so I'm right in the middle. I think I can give an accurate comparison of some of the good and the bad about both cities. So yeah, let's get right to it. Okay, let me just check my list. I got a little list of notes for this video. I mean, I know about the cities, but I'm not very professional. So let's get started by talking about location. The location of Vancouver is hard to beat, especially if you're someone who's into nature and nature sports. It's what attracted me to live in Vancouver in the first place. You know, growing up in the prairies where everything is flat, like I lived in Winnipeg, and you know, we joke in Winnipeg, if your dog runs away, you see it running for the next 2 days because it's just, there's no mountains, there's nothing, it's flat. You know, seeing the mountains and the ocean and just all those West Coast vibes that Vancouver has, that's what attracted me to moving there in the first place. It really is a special location, it's hard to beat. Now with that being said, Montreal's location, okay, you've got Mont Tremblant, you have some provincial parks and stuff. I mean, to be honest, I can't fully compare it because I haven't been that far out of the city. But what you gotta understand about Vancouver is you don't even have to go out of the city. You've got Stanley Park right next to downtown, which is a huge park that feels like you're in the wilderness. So I would say Vancouver wins in terms of being close to nature. But where Montreal wins for me is in terms of connectivity. Like when you're in Montreal, you can take a road trip and you can go to Toronto. I don't know anyone from Montreal who actually wants to go to Toronto. Shots fired. But yeah, no, I mean, that's another whole discussion, is the Toronto-Montreal rivalry.
Got this started, now Big McCarron steps in.
But yeah, I mean, you're just connected to other places. You got Ottawa, you can go east to Atlantic Canada, you can go south and you can visit New York City or Boston when the US border is not closed, which could be a while, but eventually it will open up and you can go travel again. In Vancouver, I mean, you've got Seattle, which kind of feels like American Vancouver. Like they're very similar cities culturally. So I think you're more connected to places in Montreal, but if your only concern is like going to the beach and then going rock climbing and then going surfing, there's more of those type of things you can do in Vancouver. All right, next let's talk about people. And you know, I'm not going to tell you where I like the people the most because, I mean, for me, that's why I like traveling. You know, the variety of cultures, the variety of different types of people, that's what makes the world cool, you know? But it is clear that Vancouver and Montreal have very different demographics. Vancouver is closest, you know, both physically and demographically. What am I trying to say? There's more Asian people in Vancouver is what I'm trying to say. There's large populations from places like China, from Korea, from Japan, Vietnam. It's heavily influenced by Asian populations. And that actually goes back to early Canadian history when the railroad across Canada was built in large part by Chinese immigrants. And when it ended, it hit the West Coast and a lot of them settled in places like Vancouver. Fun fact. So yeah, I mean, the Asian culture in Vancouver goes deep, which means if you're into things like sushi, you are in the right place because they got some bomb sushi in Vancouver. These days, you also have a lot of immigrants from India. And I mean, it is a multicultural place, but I would say not quite as much as Montreal. Montreal is really a multicultural city. I feel like I can hear any language on the streets of Montreal. Now, admittedly, a lot of the multicultural people are coming from countries that are influenced by France. So you might have lots of people from places like Algeria or Morocco, or of course Haiti. There are lots of immigrants from Haiti who end up in Montreal. I think the black population in Vancouver is very small. So if you're looking for black culture, again, I'm new to Montreal, so I don't know exactly how it compares to other places like Toronto or New York. But there's quite obviously more culture here than there would be in Vancouver. You also have Jewish populations living in Montreal. You have a sizable, like, Orthodox Jewish population. It's just a multicultural city. Vancouver is close, but yeah, I don't think it's quite at the level of Montreal. I hope I didn't say anything to offend anyone. Dan from the New Travel canceled for saying there's more Asians in Vancouver. I don't know. It gets weird when you talk about race these days, right? Can't we just be cool with everyone? Next thing I want to talk about is culture. Okay, so one thing you should know is Montreal is a much older city than Vancouver, and it shows. It shows when you're walking around downtown. It shows when you are old Montreal and you have the cobblestone streets. There's a very little part of Vancouver called Gastown where you still have some cobblestone streets. But I feel like the only reason they haven't torn that down for new condos is just for the tourists. Most of Vancouver is very new. It's becoming like a mega city. It's full of new shiny glass buildings. And you have a few of those in Montreal, but nothing like Vancouver. Like, the amount of investment going into Vancouver is crazy these days. So if you want a city that has that like modern big city vibe, you definitely get more of that in Vancouver downtown. Now we get to the cost. Cost of living. This is a big one. And honestly, it's one of the main reasons I'm living in Montreal. I made a video where I talked about this a while ago. Vancouver, I love you, but you are just too damn expensive. I love this city, but no one can afford to live here. BC stands for bring cash, if you don't know. Especially the housing, they have a real problem. And if you're watching this because you're considering moving to one of the cities, you just be aware it's the number one issue Vancouverites like to talk about and complain about. So yeah, not trying to scare you away from living there. I loved Vancouver. Just, it's got to be said because it's the truth. Housing is expensive and it's hard to find. Now in Montreal, people here like to complain about housing too, how it's getting more expensive, but sorry to say, you guys ain't seen nothing yet. I've lived in both cities. It's roughly half what it costs in Vancouver to live here. That might sound like an exaggeration, but after looking for apartments in Vancouver, I think it's true. I think it's about half. Now granted, because we're an older city in Montreal, some of the apartments, like some of the places we were looking at were pretty beat up. Like the floorboards should have been replaced, and some of these places just need a little bit more love. All you need is love. Okay, maybe if you go to Vancouver, get an apartment before you move there. Maybe if you go to Montreal, you want to see the apartments because some of them aren't doing so good. Cost of living overall is cheaper in Montreal, no doubt about it. However, be aware that the tax rate in Quebec is much higher. So when you're doing like everyday things, eating out, buying clothing or anything like that, you're gonna see the price and then you're gonna see the final price and you're gonna be like, wait, what?
You owe me $70 billion.
All right, last major topic I want to talk about is the weather/climate. No doubt about it, Vancouver is a more mild climate. I think the ocean just kind of stabilizes the weather. Yeah, the weather waves from the ocean, which hit the cool waves and the warm wave. I don't know anything about weather. All I know is that it doesn't snow much in Vancouver. The first year I lived there, and just so you know, I've lived 2 years in Vancouver and 1 year now in Montreal, so I'm still new, but at least I've done the 4 seasons, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. So the first winter in Vancouver, it only snowed once. Montreal gets a lot of snow. I mean, we're a typical Canadian winter. In fact, maybe even more snow than places like Toronto and Ottawa. Like, we get a lot of snow. So you might think it's an easy win for Vancouver, but it's actually complicated because Vancouver's winters aren't great either. It rains a lot. Vancouver, as some people call it. Like when I say rains a lot, again, don't underestimate how much it actually rains. I think 1 month I lived there, it rained 27 or 28 days out of 30 days in the month. That was like a record-breaking amount of rain. So that was a lot of rain even for Vancouver. But yeah, it's in the wintertime, it's raining most days. And after a while, they call it SAD, seasonal affection disorder. I really need to research these videos. Seasonal affective disorder is a type of depression that's related to changes in seasons. It seems kind of mean to call it SAD. I know I'm sad. I'm already depressed. Now you're going to remind me by calling the medical condition SAD. Yeah, so that's the condition that happens when it's too gloomy and you don't get enough sunlight in the wintertime and you get sad. And I felt that in my first winter in Vancouver. A little pro tip for you guys, if you take vitamin D every day, that will help quite a lot. So overall, I'd give the weather to Vancouver, but yeah, it's not like a blowout win or anything like that. Yeah, I would say overall, they're both interesting cities. But as I say, I live in Montreal now because, well, ideally I would be traveling a lot. So if I'm away from home for like many months of the year, it just doesn't make sense to live somewhere as expensive as Vancouver because I'm paying all this money for somewhere I'm not even using. For this point in my life, Montreal is a great place to be. There's a part of my heart that still misses Vancouver, but you know. As always, guys, I'm Dan from The New Travel. If you have more questions about these cities, leave a comment. I'll try to get to you. Hope you have a great day. Hope my dirty dishes didn't distract you too much. Oh yeah, that is quality content on YouTube.